Here's a little morning thought for fellow Christians out there. In early church history, let's see, you have mention of deacons and priests in the books of the Bible. But you kind of see them play the same role or refer to the same thing throughout the first, century and a half, around that time period. And then you saw further development between roles and, more chains of commands and more priest was a more defined thing, deacon was a more defined thing. I think it was also called proselyte, among other things. But when we think about the Roman Catholic Church, or the Catholic Church in general, we have a very good idea on what monks are, or we know some of the extreme stories of what they are capable of doing, like living in the desert for decades, fasting for long periods of time, no human contact, just pure meditation and prayer. But in the early church, it was all about missions. And you had, through the time of the Great Persecution up until pretty much Constantine, so like 325, maybe he didn't persecute as many, so may have ended around like 300, 315. But we do know that Constantine and all that, well, let's see, the Council of Nicaea happened in 325 after Constantine had declared it, that you shouldn't persecute Christians anymore. So, up until that point, so from Jesus Christ, when Pentecost happened, and you had all the disciples going around, and you had Paul's mission journeys and whatnot. If you read the Bible, like we Christians are supposed to do today, constant referrals to suffering, constant referrals to living the work of life, not based on actions, but us as Christians should be willing to do actions. And Paul says it where he knows that he has a crown laid up for him, and he knows that he has a spot in heaven based off of what he's done through what Jesus Christ has told him to do. And so you wonder why monks started adapting this. Well, if Christianity just became decriminalized pretty much and no longer under persecution, up until that point it had been flourishing, like a lot of converts. It was a big thing. Christianity usually seems to grow through persecution. Well, now they didn't have the persecution, but they had a big base. And then the emperor after Constantine is the one who made it the state religion. So now you have a whole empire with the religion. Already very faithful converts. You're still only not too far from the death of Christ. Most of the apostles died in around 60 to 70 80. So 325, I'm going to say that's around 175 years, but I'm not going to do the math real quick. I'm just going to keep going. But that's the window you have. So you still have a very corrupted, I guess. But I wouldn't even say corrupted. Just not too many reforms had needed yet. The Council of Nicaea, honestly, was the biggest one, where their main problem that they're trying to solve was God man, or they came up with the phrase God man because God, the Father and the Son are one. God came down in flesh. God was the Word. The Word was in the beginning. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. And Jesus was the incarnation of the Word that came down to us. And after he ascended, he gave us the Holy Spirit, which is all three in one. So that was the main thing they came out with. So if you have now a full Christendom that is mainly all believers, and back when the church was religion was a huge part of society, you're talking pretty much the whole population is going to church, and you have bishops literally organized over a whole empire. It'd be like how we have government officials, to do your taxes. You can go to certain locations, certain buildings to get that done, and they send that on the further buildings, or it's like a court case. You're going to start here, and if it escalates, you're going to go further up. You got local, state, government, all that, and the church was organized the same way. So if there's not as many mission bases, I guess you could say, then what better thing to do than complete isolation in the wilderness on pure meditation of the Word. I'm not saying I can condone it, and I don't and applaud it. I condone and applaud it, because I do feel like, well, could have been doing more missions in Asia, Africa, and not just the Central Roman Empire and whatever some of the borders and mission trips that the apostles went on.